can't believe it, but summer is almost over. I mean, not technically, but I've always had this feeling that as soon as the 4th of July is passed, it's all downhill from there. Town festivals are concluding, county fairs are on the horizon, and then what all of our kids are excited for, school starts again. Welcome back to Hometown Conversations. I'm your host, Roman Blemke, along with my co-host, Jill Springer.
Hello.
So summer seems like it went by fairly quickly. What was your favorite moment so far?
Oh, my favorite moment?
Yeah.
Ooh. It's been a little bit of a blur. It's been an exciting summer. I don't know if I have a favorite moment per se.
No?
There's just been a lot of sort of exciting things in the family, I guess. Like the kids are all kind of at cool ages this summer. Everybody's kind of got their own gig going on. And
yeah, being a little older now this year, you know, yours had travel baseball, which was fun. Mm-hmm. Mine have been busy out riding bike around town with their friends and doing stuff. And
the oldest is working and
driving and all that kind of freedom stuff. So
yes.
that's been kind of fun to watch. You know, we've had a lot of things that have just kind of happened this year, just, you know, from one thing to the next. But I think all of it's been kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just been a good summer.
I'm curious what everybody else thinks. What, you know, and I know it's very early August, and quite honestly, it's raining today. Mm-hmm. So I'm super excited about that. I know a lot of people aren't, but
yeah, rainy days are good though, right? One, the earth just needs the rain, and two, it's just nice to kind of a reset day for humans too.
Correct.
There's been a lot of hot sunny days, so this is.
I think I read a tweet this morning, something like, "This is one of the by the end of August will be one of the top 10 hottest summers we've ever had on record."
Really?
Uh-huh.
I knew it was dry. I didn't know that we were record breaking for heat.
Well, the last couple of years it's been dry. I mean, the lake continues to go down, and it's not getting any better, so I don't know. So we thought about today, we're just going to have some questions. It's just you and I again.
Yep. Which
I like these. I like it when we have other people in too, but I think the next person that we'll have come in here, we're going to just do this same kind of theory or the same kind of process here. We're just going to ask some questions and kind of go down that road, because I have a lot of fun doing these.
I do too. Just
it
talking
really
about
sparks a lot of conversation.
Yeah, just talking about life stuff.
Yeah, and we had a great conversation last night, and one of those questions that's in there is, you know, do you have any regrets that you look back on?
We had such a good conversation about this last night, and I'm just going to repeat what I said last night. You get to an age, or maybe not all of us, I've gotten to an age where I no longer have regrets, because I can look at the mistakes I've made and maybe the bad choices and say, yeah, but all of it led me here. Right. Any different curve in the road, any different decision, any different turn, and I might not be sitting across this table from you. So then therefore no regrets. Right. Yep. We kind of brought this up because my son asked me a few weeks ago, is there anything that I wish I would have done that I've never done? And I don't know that I can land on that either, because there were things I wanted to do when I was younger that don't seem responsible now. Mm-hmm. Skydiving. And I know a lot of people out there are like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's safe. Yeah, but you know what? I've evidently moved past that. And I don't regret that I never did it. And now I don't have any interest in doing it.
Right.
Do you have regrets? I don't know that.
Nah, I don't think so. There's things I look back on and wish I would have done. Like, you know, I think continuing to play guitar in 7th grade would have been fun, because that would have been, I don't know, I don't think helpful, but it just would have been something fun to pick up and play.
Something you could do now.
Something I could do now, which would be fine. But I don't think I really have any regrets whatsoever. I mean, like you said, everything that you do in life leads you to where you are now. And if you're happy with where you are now, then you can't really have regrets, I guess. You know, we kind of talked about it. It was like, you know, my travels through school after high school was a little bit different than I suppose others would have. You know, I went to a 4-year because I was encouraged, you got to go to the 4-year school. And the 4-year school didn't work out for me. I couldn't connect the dots as to why am I paying to go to a 4-year school to take English from high school all over again? That didn't seem like, that seemed stupid to me. So I couldn't connect the dots, what a 4-year degree meant compared to a 2-year degree. And now I don't even care about that kind of stuff, right? So it's you kind of go through that now, and you look back and you go, "What are you using that for?" You know, I don't use my television degree per se anymore, and you know,
I don't use my degree per se. But education is education.
Education's education. That's fine. But you know, I took a year off in between there, and then you know, I went to a different school, so I still graduated at the 4-year timeline, but went to a 2-year degree, which was fine, and it was fun. And then I went to work in, television for a while and met a lot of amazing people down there and still friends with a lot of them. I would have missed out on all of those experiences had I just stayed at the 4-year school. So you look back and then in from one dot to the next, you don't end up where you are today without making those decisions back then. So embrace the decisions that you've made, I guess.
And I think even mistakes, like as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, there's definitely distinct points in time in my life that creep back into my memory where I'm like, I said that or I did that. And then it kind of haunts me. And some of that was just mistakes. And I don't know, we treat mistakes very differently, I feel like, in the United States and other countries do. And we just feel like mistakes and errors are like a really bad thing. And I don't know, you learn from them. I'm a way better manager. Some of the things I did when I was a very new manager years ago, restaurants, retail stores, things like that. And I just think back and I'm like, you just handled that so poorly. But it stays with me and it changes me, who I am now. So I think if you learn from your mistakes, then...
I just to go down that road, I learned from every single boss I've ever had.
Absolutely.
The things to do and the things not to do pretty quickly. So I got to be a manager at a pretty young age, managing people. And, you look back at some of those things that I did back then. I was like, made that mistake and said that the wrong way or whatever. But you can also learn from your own things. And that, I think, is kind of interesting. So,
it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's something new that you'd like to try this year yet? We got about 5 months left in the year. You're going to make me do math live on the air. That's really hard. 7 months left. 5, 6, 7 months left. What do you want to do?
Let's see. What's something new I want to try? Oh, you go first on this one.
I have one, but it just popped up this morning.
Perfect. What is it?
I want to go back and try learning how to play guitar again.
Yeah, you were talking about that this morning.
Yeah.
And you absolutely should.
There's somebody that I didn't know that could sing or play guitar that I know, and happened to find that out this morning. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. Do you teach how to play guitar? And he's like, I mean, kind of. I'm in.
Yep.
Right. So that is something I would like to kind of spend some time in. If you think about it, I'm about ready right now. We're picking up football. Senior photos are happening. Work is happening. All that kind of stuff's going on. About that November timeline, I'm going to be looking for something else to do to not get drowned out in television or movies or that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think and I don't want to sound like woe is me, but I think it's hard for me to figure out what's something new I want to do because I already feel like there's so many things that I'm not giving enough attention to. I don't see certain friends enough. I don't exercise enough. I don't, right? Like, so I'm like, really, Jill, you want more on your plate that you're then going to feel like you're failing at? One thing that pops up, and I don't know that it's this year is the year, but a coworker of mine and I were talking, oddly enough, about golf the other day and how neither of us really learned how to play it growing up, and neither of us are very good at it at all. But what a great adult sport. She played basketball in high school and college, but you don't just go and pick up a game of basketball right now, right? Like a lot of the things we did as kids, you can't do it now. And golf, you're outside, it's exercise, you're with other people, so it's social. So it feels like something I should learn how to do, yet I literally never make the time to do it. So I don't know if there's something I want to learn or something I want to do that I've never done. That's a really hard one for me.
Golf for me it's one of those lifelong sports. I learned how to play golf from my grandparents. Both my grandfathers played golf, and they taught me at a young age. So I've been playing golf since I was 6 or 7 years old.
Yep.
And still play today. Not as much as I probably would like to. But boy, did I love being on the golf course.
Yep.
And it's just, you get to meet people out there and you get to have fun, and if you walk, it's certainly exercise.
Yeah, no, there's also the golf cart, which is really sweet too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think instead of learning something new, I'm going to change it, and I'm going to try to do some things that I feel like I'm letting fall by the wayside. All right. Like I've got, my best friend lives in the Twin Cities. I really need to see more of her. It's good for me, us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just connecting more with my friends, I don't know.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last night, that it's life becomes kind of busy. And if you don't take the time to intentionally meet with your friends, like what I do with my group of guys, that we just meet up at B-dubs on a fairly regular basis.
Yep.
If we don't do that kind of stuff, then we're shorting ourselves, I guess.
Absolutely.
So, you have relationships, but relationships need to be, cultivated, I guess is the right word.
You got to spend time. They're friends for a reason because you
Correct.
like being around them. So.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. I got to thinking about this the other day, and then I happened to come across this too as a question. Was, the sirens went off here in town the other night.
Yeah.
And we were laying in bed, and the tornado sirens went off, and there was some high winds coming in and whatever, and there's trees down around town, that kind of stuff. When I was a kid, that kind of stuff, like severe weather, when the sirens would go off, would scare me quite a bit. I remember WCCO would play like Chariots of Fire or something like that as the music would scroll and whatever.
Yeah.
And that song too, I still hate that song to this day because that's the first thing that would come into my mind as the sirens are going off. So
Sure.
Is there anything that scared you the most when you were a kid? Mine was tornado sirens.
I know a lot of kids that really freak out with tornado sirens.
Yeah, it's the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. Was there anything that really scared me? Wow, what a great question. I'm sure there was. I mean,
I could also throw in there like shutting the lights off in the basement and walking up the stairs. Like,
I hated being alone, especially in the evening. I wasn't very often, and when I was, it was certainly age appropriate. Right, I was a teenager. I'm sure there was. I'm sure if my family were listening, they'd be like, "Oh, this." But nothing I can think of off the top of my head. My mom got a job with the Minnesota Department of Health surveying nursing homes for a short time in my pre-teen years. I want to say I was maybe 12-ish, and she would be gone for 3-4 days at a time. And I developed some separation anxiety during that time and became obsessed. Not right away, but just every time she'd leave for a trip, it would get a little bit more and a little bit more that I was convinced she was going to die while she was gone, get in a car accident or something. And so, but it wasn't like, but then that she didn't have that job for a super long time. So that ended. I didn't like bad weather, but I wasn't like super afraid of it. I think I had this belief that my parents would keep me safe no matter what, which we now know as parents is impossible, right? If a natural disaster is going to come, there's only so much you can do to protect yourself and your family. But as a kid, I was like, oh, well, my parents would never let anything happen to me. So I was nervous, but I don't know.
So when I was, and the reason I say this severe weather thing, and the severe weather thing doesn't bother me anymore. Like the sirens go off, so, okay, we'll go down the basement and wait it out, whatever. But when I was a kid, I think I must have been in like third grade, maybe third or fourth, maybe third grade. I was at a friend's house, and knowing now how much distance it really wasn't that far. I was probably 3 blocks from my parents' house. But the sirens went off while I was riding back. Like I remember their parents were like, "Hey, you should probably go home. It looks like it's going to get a little bit dicey outside, whatever." So I took off, and I was a block from their house, or a block away from their house, about midway, and the sirens went off. And I looked in the sky, and it was green, and I freaked out because, at that age, I don't know how much time you have. And as we saw the other night, when the sirens went off here, it was less than a couple minutes before the winds were here. So it just kind of happened real fast, right? And I rode bike as fast as I could, and I went to a friend's house who was in the middle, banged down their door. They weren't home. So now I've wasted time. So now I'm hauling on my bike as fast as I can to ride home. And I remember shooting up the driveway, and my parents are still outside closing garage doors and stuff. So I don't know if we just had that much time, but what ended up happening is we were living in Waseca at the time, and there was a tornado in Janesville, which is about 15 miles away. So, we had some time, but not a lot. And it was like, hey, get inside, whatever. But being caught out in a bike that far away from home, and when you're in second, third, fourth grade, whatever grade it was there, you're just small. So every distance is a lot longer than it actually is.
Absolutely.
It's like I was teasing my mom the other night about having to walk to school when I was in kindergarten. We'd never allow that today, right? Depending on where you live, I guess. If you're right next to the elementary school,
you might watch your kid as they walk over.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a long ways in my head. This is a long ways to walk. And then now I've gone back and have driven it, and I'm like, dude, you were 3 blocks from school.
Right.
It was fine.
It was nothing major.
Yeah, it was nothing major. But I remember sitting there, and I was teasing my mom about this. I'm like, yeah, you never use your phone. Just like in kindergarten when I sat on the floor watching cartoons, waiting for you to call and tell me it's time to go to school. But nope, I just sat there on the floor and waited and waited and waited. And then the school called my mom and said, where's Roman? Why isn't he at school?
Yep.
And she ran home because she wasn't sure where I was. And I was just still sitting there watching, He-Man or something.
It's so funny how kids are. Like, it's so black and white. Like, it wouldn't occur to you. And it wouldn't occur to you, like, I should be going to school.
I didn't know how to read a clock.
Right.
Or she could have said, after this He-Man episode is over, you better get going, or whatever it was that I was watching. But she didn't say that. She's like, I'll call you when it's time to go. And then she got busy at work and never did.
I love some of these stories from our childhood because, like, the amount of freedom that we had that was not alarming on any level. But
right.
Now people would be like, oh, my God, I can't believe. And I get a little bit that way, too. I'm very protective. I have a little trouble letting go sometimes. But, like, I remember getting on my bike and just riding all over town as a kid. And you'd pop by houses, and pretty soon there was 12 10-year-old girls just riding. And then we go to the park, and then we go to a different park, and then we'd go to the little gas station that had like 10-cent candies. And like, I sound like I'm 104 right now, but like now you're like, okay, my child needs a phone and I need to know where they are, and we track them on their phones and we know where they are. I mean, like, it's just it's very different.
Did you ever sneak out of your house as a kid? Like when you were growing up, did you ever sneak out at night? Climb down the walls or whatever it was?
No, I certainly would have never done that. My bedroom was like in the sky. We had one of those tall houses for whatever reason. The top story, just my memory of it is that but did I ever just like sneak down the stairs and go out without? No, I never did that. I did skip school once in high school with a classmate. I know. And we went to the mall in Alexandria, and then we went out to lunch, and we were both very good kids, very good students, and we looked at each other, and I was like, are you even enjoying this? And she's like, no, I hate this. This is awful. And I think we just like went home. I don't know. I don't think we went back to school, but we did not like it. I think that I never like snuck out to my recollection, but sometimes I was around people that my parents didn't know. Like one time I got on a motorcycle with a guy. I was in high school, and he was a few years older, and my brother saw us out on the road and told my parents, and that was not a great day. Motorcycles are not a huge area of approval in my family. My parents referred to them as organ donors.
Yeah.
So that was tricky because I knew I wasn't supposed to be on a motorcycle with a guy, especially a guy at 16, 4 or 5 years older than me. I knew. But I did it. But it was the middle of the day, so I wasn't like sneaking out. But yeah, sometimes I would be with people. Yeah, I maybe wasn't completely truthful with my parents about who I was with.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I snuck out once, or I guess a couple of times, and I don't even know if it was like sneaking out per se, because I wasn't going out to do anything. Like I was running down to the local gas station, or one of the two. Yep. Whichever one was still open at like 2:00 in the morning or midnight or whatever it was.
You had a gas station open that late? Yeah. Everything in Elbow Lake at that time like was done by 8 p.m. If you needed something, man, you were out of luck.
I literally ran down to the gas station, would grab like a bottle of Pepsi or something like that, and then I would drive around for a few minutes. I'd go home. Yep. Like that was as much as that was. As for skipping school, I only skipped school once, and I did it with a couple of people. I remember one of them being Allison. She was both of her parents were teachers in school, and it was towards the end of like high school. Like I was a senior in high school, I think, and we were probably in our last couple of weeks, and we had passes that were signed by teachers. They were kind of permanent passes that we had to, and we just left. Sure, we just walked out and left, and we drove over to Morgan. I graduated from Redwood Falls. We drove over to Morgan, and we screwed around in a park there. I think my friend Shauna was along too, But we went over there. We screwed around, just swinging on swings and farting around in a park. And we waited till about 3:00, and then we drove back to Redwood.
Yep.
And nobody ever said anything to us. So we thought, well, okay, well, we got away with it, I guess.
Like when you're a really good kid, nobody even like bats an eye. Like, oh, they're not in school today. Well, that happens sometimes, right? Because I was always in school, So yeah.
Did you have an older school that you went to? Was yours kind of newer?
So interesting. Up until my senior year, it was kind of an older school. My senior year, we built a new school, and so our class was the first class to graduate from the brand new school.
Ours was the second in our new school.
Okay.
But the story I was thinking of is as I was talking about this, in thinking as, did I skip anything? I didn't really skip anything. I had a guy who later turned out to be a friend, Al.
Okay.
We were in home ec class, and he was just pestering me. He would stick a marker real near me or whatever, and try to, he was pretending he was going to draw on my face or whatever. It's just that we're in like 8th grade.
Just being boys.
Just being boys, being dumb, whatever. And we weren't really friends at this point. He was just kind of pestering, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. Al was a good dude. I don't think he was a troublemaker or anything like that. He was just a good dude, right? And I eventually got kind of frustrated with this, and I threw an empty garbage can at him. One of those little tiny ones, like the one under my desk here, right?
Right, yeah, the little short ones.
Yeah, well, that's when the teacher walked in.
Of course it was.
So then we got sent up to the principal's office, and I remember being in the principal's office. We're sitting outside waiting, and we waited for kind of a while before we were going to get called in. And he was telling me, he's like, we can't go in there. Like, we'll just walk out. Let's just walk out. And I'm like, we can't just walk out. Like, I was pissed. I'm like, we're doing this.
Right.
Like, we are getting in trouble together. Like, this is going to happen.
Like,
right?
you've been bugging me. I threw a can at you. We're both going to own this.
We're both going to own this. We're going to go through with this. And after about 5 minutes, of pestering, he's like, just get up and walk. We're going to go. So we got up and walked out of the principal's office. Never got asked about anything. We never got followed up with it. We went into, our old school in Redwood Falls, if you went into the theater room in the basement, there was a storage room that had all the theater junk in it or whatever. There was like a half wall in there, and you could climb over the top of that, and underneath there was just a crawl space underneath the entire school. So we went back in there and kind of looked around, and there was a deep hole that was dug in the ground back there. And there were like rugs laid down where other kids were skipping school. And there was no kids in there, but Al and I are like, well, we'll wait till the bell happens and then we'll leave.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We hung out in there, and then we went back to class the next day, and the home ec person was like, did you get it all sorted out? Yep. And that was it. And we walked away from it. And so it wasn't really skipping school. We skipped a class, but.
Well, but it's funny when you say this, I was never sent to the principal's office, but you imagine a scenario where...
goody two-shoes.
Listen. But you imagine a scenario where you go to the principal's office and the principal's like, tell me what you've done. And in your head, you're like, they know everything already. Like somehow in the minute and a half it took you to get there, the teacher and the principal had some huge conversation. And then you get back to the room and the teacher's like, did you get it? And you're like, yes. And like, again, like they've had... and they don't know.
Yeah, they don't know.
They're just like, tell me why you're here.
Maybe they do today with emails and all that kind of stuff. They probably figure it out, but yeah.
Okay, I'm going to veer off topic just a touch here. Which do you enjoy most? Music, television, or movies?
Oh, that's a great question, because we just watched the end of one of my favorite movies before we started this podcast, which was one of the Avengers movies. But I think I like music more. Mm-hmm. What do you
Absolutely, hands down music. Like I'm reading this question going, if I absolutely had to keep only one of them, it would be music.
So it's music, movies, and what was the other?
Television.
Television. I would go, if I had to rank them, I would do music, movies, and then television significantly farther down. Now, the reason I say that is the first thing that pops in my head when I think about television is like, episodics and the little 30-minute deals on, TGIF and stuff like that. Yep. Working in television, I hated watching those shows.
Sure.
The comedy shows with, all these things. I never got to watch any of the NBC stuff when I was in, because I worked at an ABC affiliate. So I never got to see anything on the other channels. So it was just whatever ABC had.
Right.
And you get really tired of watching like Tim Allen and Home Improvement. Now I love those shows back then.
But you got to bounce around a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't deal with it now. But today, I don't look at some of the things that like Netflix puts out, like Stranger Things. They're television, but they're really long form movies.
I don't think we would call that television. I mean, it's done by a movie distributor. I mean, technically that's what Netflix is.
I think so.
Television and movies have become a very, as you say that, these episodic series are really more, like you say, like a really long movie.
Yeah, I don't get into like regular television type of things. So I don't watch a lot of CBS. I don't watch ABC, any of that kind of stuff, really. I probably stopped when I started streaming everything at home instead.
Yep.
I guess. So
Sam mentioned to me the other day he's very excited for American Idol to start again. So we made an impact.
That I do watch. Very important to me.
Do you want me to ask another one?
Yeah.
All right. Should everyone be required to work in the service industry at some point in their lives?
So I think the answer is yes. And I'm very curious to hear your answer specifically because you did work in the service industry for a while.
For a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm more like a hell yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't think it matters what. You could be a server. You could be a host. You could be a
work in the kitchen.
busboy, work in the kitchen. You could, take the orders and the money at the counter at a fast food restaurant. You could even work in a grocery store, like anything where you interact on that way with people, because what I think you learn from it is not to be a colossal jerk and not to take for granted that just because you're paying for a service that people don't need to like clean up after you per se, right? Like there are families and people out there that fidget. It's not always kids. And you come to clean up the table and there's 900 sugar packets that are opened and folded and bent and the sugar's everywhere. And you're just like, what even happened here? Like, I'm sorry you don't know what to do with your hands, but why is this colossal mess my problem now? And you just realize to be, I think, respectful of your space, even if you're paying for a service, doesn't mean you get to walk all over people and be unkind. I also think it helps you recognize, like, obviously the default, if you think that the bread you're buying at the grocery store was on sale and it's not, not everybody, but you yell at the cashier because she somehow sets up the computer system. She somehow, like, or your food is horrible and you get angry at the server. Well, she didn't make it. He or she didn't make it. So I think you learn how and when to voice your complaints. And you can still fight for the fact that you thought the bread was on sale. And you can still return your food if it isn't good. But there's a way to talk to people. And I think you learn that when you're in the service industry.
A little bit. I think there's what's the right word to say? Compassion that you learn a little bit. Empathy, probably.
Tact.
Tact. Huge on tact, right?
Yep.
Over the years, I've done a lot. I look for people in our positions that have worked in the service industry because I think it's important.
Yep.
Right. So I just find that people really know how to take care of people.
Yes.
That have worked in the service industry. So I look for it. I think it's important. I'm trying to push kids into doing that right now. Work in the service industry a little bit. Also, a little bit of hard manual labor doesn't hurt them either.
Absolutely.
But that's just, so I think it's very important.
Yeah. You bring up a great point too, that it's very helpful in a lot of lines of work, knowing how to talk to different types of people, right? When you work in the service industry, you deal with happy people, crabby people, funny people, people that think they're funny, but they're not funny, people that hardly say anything. That's not you. You are very funny. As soon as I said people that think they're funny, not funny, he's like, is that me?
Is that me?
No, but you learn that not everyone communicates the same, and you got to kind of ebb and flow with that, because that is life, right? You're never going to get everybody to act or say or be how you want them to be, so you kind of learn how to manage it.
So along that same line, do most bad experiences turn out for the best? Do you think?
Yeah, I do.
I think you learn something from them, probably.
I think there's some things that you can say, I learned from it, but this isn't the best. And I think I hate it when children lose a parent. Right, like the death of a parent when you're a kid. I think losing a child would be horrific. Like, I think there are things where you're like, yeah, I learned something from it, but this is not for the best.
Right.
For the most part, yeah, I think what you learn and what you come out on the other side of things is you're generally better for it. But I say that hesitantly because I really have had a pretty good life as far as horrible, bad things happening, right? I haven't had any traumatic experiences. I haven't lost anyone real close to me. I haven't, right? Like, I've never been to war. I've never been on drugs. Right? So I say, oh yeah, everything is great. Everything happens for a reason and you learn from it. But I recognize that there might be people that go, nope, I've been through some really bad stuff and I wish I wouldn't have.
Yeah. I think there's the caveat that you put in there is important, right? Because I think you can ask that question a lot of different ways and everybody's going to answer it a little differently based on their own personal history.
Absolutely.
I don't know that everything turns out for the best, obviously.
Right.
But I'd be curious as to what other people think about that, because there's just it's really coming from your perspective of where you're at in your life today, what's happened in your past, if there's anything traumatic that's happened, that kind of stuff. Yep. So, I don't know. That's a tough question to ask, I think.
I think so. Like you say, it depends on the person. It depends on the day. It depends on what memories pop into your head of something that happened when you're asked. It's just, Yeah.
That's
interesting. Do you think it's more charitable to spend your money or your time?
Time.
Yeah, I agree.
Time immediately. Money is one thing, and I know that some organizations really need the money, but they also, based on the people I talked to today, need people to volunteer their time.
Absolutely.
I get very concerned about how, and whether I should be worrying about this or not is, I guess you could throw a coin up in the air on that one. But I get worried that there's some organizations and some events that our community has that aren't going to be as great going forward because there's just not enough people volunteering to do things.
Correct.
We talked to a friend of ours the other day that said, well, when we had all of our kids, we were still volunteering and we were still doing all this. And what we're finding today is a lot of, younger people who are having kids don't want to volunteer their time because they want to stay with their kids. And I think that's interesting because, I look at today, like I do things differently based on my experiences when I was younger.
Sure, absolutely.
And all of these kids that are now having kids and stuff are basing their decisions on what their parents did and how their experiences were when they were growing up.
Yep.
So, you I don't know, you change a little bit based on that, but we have to find a way that, if we don't get people to volunteer time, the events will stop. They're just going to, because there isn't going to be enough people to do it. And then everyone's going to look around and go, what happened? And people are just going to throw their hands up and say, you didn't volunteer.
You didn't help. And we've said this on this podcast several times. You don't have to make a huge commitment. You don't have to even serve on a board, just a committee, show up, for a few things. But I definitely think time is more valuable. I think there's some organizations where they need money funds research, or money builds a house, or money, whatever. But I see in my day-to-day life that organizations, groups, nonprofit, they need time. They need people's time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thought on that. Anyway.
I think I would agree. So. Yeah.
Which person in your family do you most resemble?
Oh, my mom.
Are you sure?
Well, I guess your definition of resemble, right? You are convinced that I look just like my brother. Like you've compared it to you and your sister who, I mean, I've seen the filters where we can put hair on you or make her bald and you are the same human. Filters are great that way. I don't see it with Tim and I, but you do. Strong.
I sat across the table from Tim that time that we went up and had dinner with him. And I'm like, well, now I see why people say that about my sister and I.
Like you were like a little like, holy cow from it.
Yeah. Yep. But why do you say your mom?
Oh, because I feel like I'm like her, right? So if you mean resemble physically, sometimes I look like her, but sometimes not. But I resemble her in personality. Sure. I resemble her in the way I parent, in the way I manage. I just feel like, who am I most like as a human? Definitely my mom. And there literally couldn't be a better person to be more like. She's a phenomenal human being. But yeah, I suppose I look most like Tim. Yeah.
Sarah and I will sit in meetings and we have to tell people, like we have to stop the meeting about 10 minutes in and be like, brother and sister, move on.
Right,
like
do they just keep looking at you with this look on your face?
You can kind of tell when we're sitting there and their eyes start darting back and forth and you can almost sense like they want to ask.
Like, wait, what's going on
Yeah,
here?
why do you guys look so much alike? No, we just say, hey, we're going to stop for a second. We're brother and sister. Let's move on.
Yep.
And then
they're
everybody
like,
everybody kind of, and they chuckle and we move forward. We all laugh and have a good laugh about it, and then we move forward. But
so we've determined you look a lot like your sister. Who do you think you most resemble in personality?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have the right answer to it because I think I've picked up things from different people over the years.
Yep.
So it's not just one parent or the other or sibling. It's a combination of people I've been around my entire life.
Yeah, I would agree.
That
you've definitely got pieces of your mom. You've definitely got pieces of your dad. But I don't know that I attribute. I didn't know your grandparents.
Yeah. I would think that I think that it's my personality is built around, or resemblance is built around people I've been around.
Yep.
You know, I carry parts of friends with me that are no longer here.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I had this friend that I worked with at the TV station. His name was Greg Gangler, and he was amazing. He was probably one of the best, coolest dudes I ever hung around. The guy could spit insults at you faster than your brain could even consciously think. And I'm like, how the hell is he doing this? And I couldn't come up with things fast enough, but he was the best guy. Like we just, you know, he was the director at the station when I was there. And as I was a weekend director, that kind of stuff, we laughed. We went on several, adventures together. And unfortunately, after I left the station, he came back and he died of a brain aneurysm. I don't know how many years ago now, but I miss that dude.
Yep.
He was fun, and I carry parts of that with me. I think because I can spout off some good stuff every once in a while.
No, you bring up a great point. I mean, obviously, my mom and I are a lot different too, right? So when I jumped to that answer right away, it's not like we're the same person. We're a lot different. But there's so many people in my life that I have admired for different reasons, and you try to emulate that. You try to grab onto a piece of that. Well, I want to work hard like that person. I want to be funny like that person. I want to have good character like that person. My stepdad is a huge role model for me. He just has strong character and convictions, and he doesn't let them waver. And I'm like, oh, that's that. So you harness little bits of everybody that you've known in your life. And,
right.
That's the beautiful thing about life and friendships and family. And
for those of you guys who are listening, I'm curious who you think you resemble.
Yeah.
Is it somebody in your family, or is it somebody that you know and you grew up around? Who is the person that you think you resemble the most, and why?
And maybe some of you are like, no one. I'm not like anyone, and that's an answer too. I mean, that's okay too. Obviously, that's an answer.
Yeah, that's an answer.
I didn't mean to sound insulting.
No. So I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And I think this is we'll end this more on a lighter note.
Okay.
Okay. So what indulgence would you enjoy if there were no consequences?
Oh, what a great question.
If there were no consequences, I would eat as much pizza as I possibly could.
No, the first thing, this is embarrassing, but the first thing I thought of was, I think I would just eat everything. Like all the time. I just love food. Mm-hmm. And junk food. I love nachos and tacos and pizza and ice cream. And that's all I want in the world, but I don't want to have a heart attack in a year from now. And, right. I want to be able to get off the couch, and I'd love to be able to take care of our grandchildren someday and have them come over. And so I want to move around. I want to be healthy. I want to live a really long time. But if there were no consequences, I would have a ginormous plate of nachos in front of me. And I feel like my answer should be much more insightful and intellectual and better, that like I would, travel around the world and help save hunger. No, I'd eat it. That's embarrassing. This is not ending on a light note at all.
I love that you're like, no, no, it's going to be eating. I'm sorry. Sorry, it's going to be eating. No.
Wow, I might have to take some stock in my life after this podcast.
No, I feel the same way because, as I say this, I would love to be eating, pizza and whatever. At the same time, I say that like we've kind of changed in the last, couple of months.
I'd say
I'm down
2.5 months. You're down over 20 pounds.
24 pounds right now, 26 pounds. So, going in the right direction. But as we're doing that, we're finding how to make foods a little bit differently.
Yep.
We got to taste some amazing ice cream this morning that is basically like protein ice cream. And there's
no fat, no sugar. I've never eaten anything. There was a touch of milk that got added at the end, and that would be the only ingredient that would be considered bad for you. And it was milk.
It was like protein milk too.
Yeah. So it's not. It was the best thing I've ever put in my mouth, and not just because we're eating differently, because it really is good ice cream.
Yes, the ice cream was so good. It was so.
In fact, as soon as we get off the podcast, I have to order the ingredients to make this ice cream because now I want that.
Well, we were sitting there and it was a pint, and I'm like, I could eat this whole thing on my own.
Oh, and then they added a little bit of that peanut butter powder to it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was like a candy bar ice cream. It was amazing.
It was so good. So that's my indulgence. That's what I would do.
Yeah, we're fabulous.
We're fabulous.
Changing the world one snack at a time.
One snack at a time. Well, thank you for everybody for joining us today on today's podcast here at Hometown Conversations. We made it about 41 minutes right now.
You're kidding. Nope. We were going to get off. I was going to be like, well, here's our 20-minute podcast. No. Every time I think that.
Every time. So you can check us out on YouTube. Just look up Hometown Conversations. You can look me up on YouTube as well, and you should find it right there. You can also now find this podcast on iHeartRadio as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Hometown Conversations. If you have any ideas for an episode and anyone that you want us to talk to in particular, shoot us a message through our Facebook page at Hometown Conversations. Thanks for listening or watching. Until next time, have a great week.